What's your best, but wait, it gets worse, story? An acquaintance got married in an extravagant $80,000 ceremony, that's $57,000 in freedom dollars, and broke up on their honeymoon. But wait, it gets worse. They split because the groom was cheating on the bride with a string of one-night stands. Meanwhile, the bride was having an ongoing affair with the best man. But wait, it gets worse. They pretended to stay married for 6 months after out of shame, but it all came tumbling down when he made a huge Facebook rant calling her a whore and tagging all their friends and family in it with the most dramatic shitstorm of a comments section known to humanity. But wait, it gets worse. The bride and the best man decided they wanted to have a baby, and she immediately ran off with him and got knocked up. I currently live in a 3-bed 1-bath house. My roommates were getting married and had a bunch of bridesmaids over at the time. A couple of them stayed the night after drinking. I wake up the next morning with a massive shit festering in my stomach. Every move I make I feel it's just gonna squeeze out. I heard both girls in the bathroom giggling and getting ready. So I panic, grab a roll of toilet paper and head to a remote part of the backyard. When I went out back, I left the door cracked enough for our Shih Tzu to sneak out. I didn't see him while I was shitting and ran back inside to grab a plastic bag. The girls had just walked into the living room. I chatted them up, avoiding the fact that I just shit in the backyard. Finally they left and I returned to my shithole. It was half eaten and my little old dog was face down it, slurping it up. Disgusting, right? I had to clean his face off with rags and water and soap. Before I could muster all of the items up, he jumped on the back patio furniture and ran his shitty little face through everything. Then he shook, as I walked up to him, flinging my own feces every which way. I finally cleaned him and put him inside. I cleaned up the couch pretty quickly, and it being outside furniture, I was able to blast it down with a power hose. Not bad, right? Quick and easy. Nope, I walked back into a monstrosity. Poor guy ate the shit so fast, and it being shit, it didn't settle well. This isn't an exaggeration when I say that I counted 16 different piles of dog vomit feces throughout the house. Most of it on the couches. I, for the next 12 hours, cleaned up my own shit-turned dog vomit. Basking in the smell of horrors for what felt like forever. Had a tooth extracted, but the dentist didn't take the abscess underneath it out. Sealed me back up and sent me home, where my face swelled like a balloon. 24 hours later, Im rushed to the ER shaking and vomiting with an infection rapidly spreading through my jaw. Emergency surgery where everyone including the surgeon was panicking. Finally got home, with a drain installed in my jawline, a steroid shot and antibiotics, but suddenly developed thrush in my mouth and on my face. Back to the DRs, and after a few, well this is odd, moments, and a slew of tests, we find out my blood sugar is over 300. I'm now diabetic. A week later COVID hit, and I've lost my job. Down to our last few hundred desperately awaiting news of a second stimulus. I have my diabetes medication, but can't get the test strips because they are so overpriced and have to prioritize bills and food. I have 2 kids under 10. Getting ready to start homeschooling with 2 kids. Pretty tough year so far, looking forward to catching a break, dear God I need one. In 2018, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in April, my stepdad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in June, my mum was diagnosed with cancer in September, treatable thankfully, one of my closest friends was diagnosed with cancer, also treatable, in October, and I had to have my 12-year-old bunny put down a few days later. Then in November, my aunt died. I was in work when I took the call about my aunt and I just couldn't stop laughing because it was so ridiculous that this was happening all one after the other. It was hysteria. I wasn't amused by her passing. Fast forward to 2020, my stepdad died at the beginning of May and my dad died at the beginning of June. The friend who had cancer in 2018 called me the day after my dad's death to say her cancer is back and it's in her bones, and then my dad's funeral was scheduled for 3 days before Father's Day, which happened to be the day before my birthday this year. So yeah, that's my tale of woe. Worst thing is, I'm not convinced I'm even at the end of the story yet. My grandmother died on Thanksgiving Day in front of the whole family. My grandmother had gotten diagnosed with brain cancer about 6 months prior, and knowing that she was in hospice care, much of the family decided to come visit for one last Thanksgiving, even though she was unconscious in the next room. The entire day, the cooking was going on despite Grandma's condition, and teenage me spent many hours salivating over a whole roasted pig being barbecued outside in place of a turkey. I was pretty stoked. Just as the sizzling pig is being taken off the barbecue, the hospice nurse sticks her head outside and announces that it's time. My grandmother at this exact moment is passing away. We all go inside, gather around the bed, and for 45 minutes or so, I watch as my grandmother gasps for air, twitches and dies. It was a little traumatic. For some reason after that, we decide we are going to still sit down and eat dinner. I'm watching the barbecue pig be chopped up, and as I'm thinking I can probably still get myself to eat some of it, they douse it all in vinegar and chili flakes, ruining it. So as I try to choke down this enormous disappointment, after watching my grandmother die, the morticians come and wheel her body out through the living room, and at that point, I was pretty much done. I think probably the worst week of my life was getting my wisdom teeth out. I mean, I'll take my parents' divorce over doing that shit again. I got my teeth out, and I woke up to being yanked out of my chair by the dentist to go to the recovery room. I immediately started crying cause I didn't know what was going on. Once there, I had to ask them to go get my mom 3 times because I was calling in and out of sleep and I didn't understand what the nurse was saying. I get home and my mouth doesn't hurt that bad, but in still high AF and can't swallow because my spit was all bloody and gross. So I literally just cried and drooled on my mom till I passed out again. I'm 21, not a great look. I woke up and everything was fine for the first 2 days. But it became abundantly clear that I was allergic to whatever antibiotics they had me on. I threw up for 6 days, and the dentist wouldn't take me seriously until I started throwing up blood. I couldn't eat solid food, and I have a permanent aversion to chocolate ice cream now. Fine going down, not great coming up. When he finally asked me to come in so he could check me out, there was a huge snowstorm and we were stranded for 2 days. Then, I missed an exam because I couldn't do anything without vomiting, and had to get a doctor's note from the dentist, which was a whole other ordeal. The only good thing that happened was I lost like 10 pounds, which I immediately gained back because 4 weeks later COVID hit. Now I've got this crazy scars in the back of my mouth that I don't think healed properly, and I haven't been able to go back to the dentist because COVID. Note to anyone getting their teeth out, the actual process and recovery isn't that bad, just make sure you're not allergic to the medicine they give you. Woof. When I was in college I got my first root canal. I went to the dentist at the mall because I was desperate to get my tooth fixed and my regular dentist couldn't see me for over a month. It had broken on a fucking cookie and it hurt so much. They didn't do it properly and it became insanely infected. I had to drop a class because I was in too much pain to go. I was taking like 12 ibuprofen a day and finally I convinced the dentist to give me antibiotics. I'm going to try to explain this in words. This was on the lower jaw on my right side. When I press my tongue against my inner jaw on that side, it's still twice the size of the other side. Like it swelled up when it was infected and never went back to its normal size again. I've had plenty of dental work since and no one has ever said anything, so I guess it's fine. But I have never been in that much pain in my life. I went on holiday with my parents to Ireland a few years back, and one of the days of the trip was one of the worst days of my life. The trip as a whole was fantastic, but this one day just sucked. My parents had booked all the hotels through a travel agency, and the night that we were in Cork, we were booked to stay in this spa resort because we got a good deal or something. At first when we pull up it looks super fancy, you know, like a typical resort. But then we find out then we're not actually staying in the main building and they bring us out to these little cottages. Okay, fine. But then we get in and the entire place smells like sewer and there's a million stains everywhere. We're like whatever at first, we're not that picky and it's only a night. The next morning I wake up to find out that my period has started, so that's already a bad start to a day. Then I find out that the shower doesn't work and we all have to take baths. My parents go first and then it's my turn and we run out of hot water. So I have to take a bath in puddle from what's left in cold water. But wait, it gets worse. We then decide that we're gonna buy tickets for one of those hop-on hop-off tour buses. We buy the tickets and we get on the bus and it's good at first. We're seeing the sights, it's pretty whatever. But then, the bus suddenly gets on the freaking highway and we're sitting on the open top as branches are whizzing by over our heads fast enough that it could decapitate you if we weren't ducking. We find out from the other passengers that this tour bus wasn't a tour bus but instead a bus taking people back to their cruise ship 40 minutes away. So we have to sit on the open top of a double-decker bus on the highway with branches almost hitting us for 40 minutes, all while I'm terrified that I'm gonna leak through my pants because I'm on my period. We eventually get to the cruise ship and we find out there's a train station nearby. So we go the train station to get a train back to Cork, but the last one just left. So we had to wait an hour or so until the next one came. Don't really remember what happened after that. It's funny now to look back on, but I was pissed when it was happening. Moral of the story is to not let travel agents book your hotels and to double check the bus you're getting on. I highly recommend Ireland though, beautiful place.